There are monkeys on a Caribbean island that get drunk every day. Nobody taught them. They steal cocktails from tourists, pick the strongest ones first, and stumble back to their trees. Researchers studied over 1,000 of them on the island of St. Kitts. The results came back almost perfectly sorted. 65% drink moderately, 15% drink heavily, 5% never touches at all. Sound familiar? That distribution didn't come from culture. It didn't come from stress or trauma or bad decisions. It came from somewhere these monkeys share with you. A piece of biology so old, it predates the split between their lineage and yours. Here's what nobody tells you about alcohol. You didn't discover it, you didn't invent it, you didn't develop a taste for it somewhere along the way. You evolved to find it. 9 million years ago, a single mutation changed everything, and every human alive today carries it. The question isn't why ancient humans started drinking. The question is whether they ever had a choice. For tens of millions of years, your ancestors lived in trees and ate fruit, not the fruit in your grocery store. Wild fruit, seasonal, scarce, fought over. The ripest piece had the most calories. The most calories meant survival, and the ripest fruit smelled like alcohol. As fruit ferments, it releases ethanol. That smell carries further than sugar. It cuts through jungle air and signals one thing: maximum calories, right here, right now. Primatologist Robert Dudley at UC Berkeley spent years building this case. The ancestors that followed the smell of ethanol found the best fruit first. They ate more. They survived more. They passed that preference forward. For millions of years, the smell of alcohol meant you won today. Then around 9 million years ago, the forest began to shrink. Climate shifted. Trees pulled back. Fruit on the ground, fallen, bruised, already fermenting, became the only option. One mutation changed everything. The gene was called ADH4. It controlled an enzyme in the liver, the one responsible for breaking down ethanol. In most primates, that enzyme works slowly. Alcohol accumulated in the bloodstream faster than the body could process it. One piece of fermented fruit and you were impaired. Then a mutation appeared, a single change in ADH4 that increased ethanol processing capacity by 40 times. The individuals who carried it could eat fermented fruit off the ground. Without shutting down, they absorbed the calories, they kept moving, they survived. Molecular biologist Matthew Carrigan at Santa Fe College confirmed this in 2015, tracing the mutation back precisely 9 million years ago, right at the moment the fossil record shows our ancestors descending from the trees. Not a coincidence. The forest disappeared. The ground fruit was all there was, and the ones whose livers could handle it are the ones who made it through. You are descended from those individuals. Every single one of them. Fast forward 9 million years. Somewhere in the Andes, a woman is chewing corn, not eating it, chewing it, thoroughly, deliberately, then spitting it into a clay pot. Another woman does the same. Then another. The pot fills slowly over hours. Then they wait. The enzymes in human saliva break starch into sugar. The sugar ferments. 3 days later, the pot contains chicha, a mildly alcoholic drink that has been made this way for thousands of years and is still produced in parts of Peru today. This is the oldest biotechnology your species ever invented. No tools, no equipment, no knowledge of chemistry, just the human mouth and the accumulated observation that something interesting happened when you did this. Every culture that ever existed figured out fermentation independently. The Amazon, the Arctic, ancient China, Sub-Saharan Africa, all of them, separated by oceans and thousands of years, all arriving at the same conclusion. That's not coincident. That's a species following a 9 million year old instruction. But alcohol wasn't just about calories. Robin Dunbar at Oxford spent years studying why humans drink together, not what alcohol does to the body, but what it does to a group. His conclusion had nothing to do with intoxication. When primates groom each other, picking through fur, sitting close, making physical contact, the brain releases endorphins, not a metaphor. Actual endorphins, the same ones that fire during exercise, during laughter, during sex. It creates trust, closeness, the felt sense that this person is safe. Grooming works, but it's slow. You can only groom one individual at a time. Alcohol at low social doses activates the same endorphin pathway. At a gathering of 30 people, you can't groom everyone, but you can pass a pot of chicha around a fire. For most of human history, shared drinking wasn't recreation. It wasn't escape. It was the fastest technology available for turning strangers into people who would die for each other. There's one more detail worth knowing. For most of human history, water killed people, not dramatically, slowly. Settlements grew, waste accumulated, water sources contaminated. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid, invisible, untraceable, and relentless. fermented drinks were different. The brewing process, even primitive brewing, produced enough alcohol to kill most waterborne pathogens, 1 to 3% alcohol content. Not enough to get drunk, enough to make the water safe. In medieval Europe, children drank weak ale instead of water, not because anyone thought it was healthy, because the alternative was watching them die of contaminated water before age 5. The village drunk and the village doctor were, for most of history, solving the same problem. Alcohol wasn't a vice layered on top of civilization. It was infrastructure, the thing that kept enough people alive long enough to build everything else. Go back to those monkeys on St. Kitts, stumbling back to their trees, picking the strongest drink first. 65% moderate, 15% heavy, 5% never touching it at all. Nobody taught them that distribution. Nobody taught you yours. 9 million years of evolution doesn't disappear because you live in a house with running water and a refrigerator full of safe food. The program still runs, the reward still fires. The smell of fermentation still means something ancient and specific to a brain that hasn't fully updated to the modern world. That specific feeling when the first sip hits after a long day, that's not weakness. That's not a character flaw. That's the same signal that kept your ancestors moving through a period of climate collapse when the fruit on the ground was all there was. You didn't develop a taste for alcohol. You inherited one, built over 9 million years, confirmed by one mutation, carried through every generation that made it far enough to pass it forward. The monkeys knew it before we had a word for it. The vats at Göbekli Tepe knew it before we had a civilization to put them in. And somewhere, your liver has always known it too.